Good afternoon. Thanks for being here. Just some housekeeping for folks joining us over the phone or Zoom. You all will be muted. There will be time at the end for some questions. Feel free to submit those in the chat if you want, or raise your hand during the Q&A if you're in here with us. Just minutes ago, Judge Conley wrapped up a hearing at the U.S. District Court in Madison, where attorneys representing the Bad River Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa asked him to order the immediate shutdown and purge of the Line 5 oil pipeline where it crosses the river before further riverbank erosion causes it to potentially rupture and create an environmental and human health catastrophe. Attorneys for Enbridge argued instead for continued operation of the pipeline in trespass of the band. So for the next few minutes, you'll hear from the band's chairman, Mike Wiggins, the band's attorney, Riaz Kanji, and from local impacted business leaders, residents, and clean water advocates. Grand Council Chief Reg Nikanabi of the Anishinaabe Nation will tie up at the end. And Chairman Wiggins, please feel free to start when you're ready.
Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to say that as a tribal nation, as a sovereign nation, we didn't file this injunction for protection lightly or frivolously. We have watched the river live its life and do what it does as a beautiful, pristine life force within our sovereign boundaries. It's done what we knew it would. It's continued to erode and pound away at the meander, a particular place where the pipeline crosses, and it's within a point of imminent threat of blowing that particular area out and rupturing Line 5. Filing for an injunction was a responsible governmental action on behalf of our tribe and our tribal council. Protecting our lands, our ecosystems, our waters, and our people is at the heart and soul of what we want to do for our people in real time and also all those future generations. And so in court today was a very difficult day, to be honest. We heard testimony and different opinions about our sovereign home. It's a very difficult thing to listen to folks that have never lived around our river, folks who do not have a relationship with our river, who do not know the peculiarities and the power of our river, give quote unquote expert testimony on those types of things, the powers and the forces and the quote unquote flashiness of the hydrology of our river. We know as inhabitants in that place for thousands of years what our waterways are capable of, and there's a lot of things that were not allowed to be said in that courtroom, both during our litigation last fall and also today, about the factuality of how our river interacts with our place. And all of that culminates in us as ancient people in their ancestral homeland as being the true experts of what's going on there. And we know from the site visits and from the relationship we have that there's an imminent threat that is playing out there, and one that spells forever changes to our ways of life. And so when you have the existence of a people in their home and their ways of life and their ecosystems and that whole web of life being characterized as quote unquote an equity that's got to be measured against Enbridge's equities, i.e. profits, and that Enbridge's profits and the notion of potential impacts to refineries in Quebec and other places like that being given even keel consideration, it's a very difficult thing. I found myself thinking back to our treaties and how, from a legal point of view, our treaties are are filtered and looked at by the court of law through the eyes of those Mewusha Ogimawa, those ancient chiefs, those old chiefs that signed those treaties. That's how those treaties are interpreted and looked at. In this court, it was clear that it's being looked at through the eyes of Enbridge executives who see profit. And that's a very, very difficult thing because we're here for our life. We're here for the life of our river. I think we were mischaracterized by the court for some of our efforts to protect our home, as though it's an issue that is solely about Enbridge and their operations, when really today was all about protection and the preservation and the sending forward of our ecosystem and the lifeways of our people. And that's what today was about. We still are very optimistic that the judge reviews the totality of what was said today and comes to understand that the power of our river is real and the imminence of a Line 5 rupture is real. And there's a whole web of life and everything else, the Big Lake Superior, that is set to be impacted. At the end of the day, we represent Americans. We represent the freshwater stronghold of America. I believe that there's an awakening that needs to take place in terms of the weight and gravity and the importance of the sanctity of clean water. And today is a great opportunity for the judge to look at the resources of America, look at the preservation of a sovereign people, sovereign nation, and enact accordingly protection and preservation. So that's some of the remarks I want to put forward today. Thank you.
Thanks, Chairman Wiggins. Mr. Kanji, come on up.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. My name is Riaz Kanji, RIYAZKANJI. I have the great privilege of representing the Bad River Band along with a wonderful team of lawyers and others. I want to thank Chairman Wiggins for his leadership in this fight and the band, which has really just been an incredible fighter. As the chairman said, there are days in the court system that are harder than others. It is not easy to go through the legal process. It is not easy to be a tribe like the Bad River Band and to fight a opponent as supremely well resourced as Enbridge, but the band has been relentless in its fight to protect its homeland and waterways, not only for its own citizens, but as the chairman said, for all people. I want to thank our witnesses who came today and everyone who came out to support the effort. I'll be very quick. There was some good and there was some bad today. The good in terms of what the judge, and I'm talking, and this is without making predictions, I'm way too superstitious to do that, but the judge said some clear things at the end of the day. The good is he sounds like he will set a threshold at which the pipeline needs to be shut down because of the continued progression of the river. He suggested that he would do that fairly quickly, and he is taking into account some important considerations in setting that threshold. Unfortunately, from our point of view, he didn't set that today. He's not shutting it down today, but we will remain hopeful that he will set a standard that will protect the river and the precious resources. The harder thing to hear was that the judge appears unwilling, and he may still change his mind, but unwilling to issue an injunction because of Enbridge's continuing trespass on the band's lands. It sounds like he is thinking more in terms of financial penalties for Enbridge's continuing trespass. The band got into this fight because of the tremendous threat posed by the pipeline. It has been one of the few entities along the right of way that has stood up to Enbridge, that has not accepted money, because for the band, this fight goes far beyond that. We are confident and we remain confident that federal law requires an injunction against a trespass on an Indian lands. Hopefully Judge Conley will rule that way. If he doesn't, there is very good law in the Seventh Circuit, the Court of Appeals, on this issue, and trust the band will fight on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Carlson, when you're ready to come up.
Hi, my name is Glenn Carlson, GLENN, I am the town chair of the town of LaPointe, which is Madeline Island and most of the rest of the Apostle Islands. Madeline Island is a spiritual homeland for the Ojibwe people. It also is a thriving economy on its own. Even though we only make up less than 3% of the population of Ashland County, we're 20% of their tax base. And they are the second poorest county in the state. They can ill afford to have anything impairing their tax base and their support. So I just am here to say that the town of LaPointe has in the past several times taken official positions in support of Bad River's lawsuit against Enbridge. We actually took an affirmative vote. We usually don't have an affirmative vote to not apply for a grant, but the town of LaPointe took an affirmative vote to not apply for a grant from Enbridge for first responder money. Even though we could use it, we didn't want to support their efforts to get good publicity. So I'm just here to say that we're going to continue to support the Bad River Band. If there's any place they need me to be, I will be there, and thank you for your support. Oh, and before I end, I have a huge job. I am going to introduce a simulation of what an oil spill would do in terms of its encroachment on Madeline Island. So the Bad River, at the mouth of the Bad River, is just about 10 miles from the shoreline of Madeline Island. And with the currents that we have around the island going this way and that way, every day it's different. So it would not take very long for any kind of oil spill to completely surround the island. And as I was saying to...
One second, it should play.
Yeah,
There we go.
here we go.
There we go. Go ahead.
So it wouldn't take long for the oil spill to reach Madeline Island, and then with the currents that we have, some coming from the northeast and then next day from the southwest, it wouldn't take long for the oil spill to completely encircle the island. And as I was mentioning to someone just a few minutes ago, we rely on a ferry to get us on and off the island. The Coast Guard does not let the ferry run when there's oil on the water. And so worst case scenario, the pipeline ruptures when we have 10,000 people on the island for 4th of July. And I have no idea how we would ever figure out how to get people off the island. So it's a big deal for us. I know it's a big deal for the band. It's a big deal for, frankly, everyone who uses water. I mean, the Great Lakes are the largest source of fresh water in the world. And we cannot risk anything happening to that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sutherland. You're ready.
My name is Bob Sutherland, and I am owner of Cherry Republic. It is a specialty food shop located in Traverse City, Michigan. And we have stores around the Midwest and customers, hundreds of thousands of customers as well. I am also co-chair of the Great Lakes Business Network, a group of 190 businesses around the Midwest with one goal to save the Great Lakes from any environmental damage. Our focus is stopping Line 5, shutting it down permanently. We're excited that we had a chance to speak and talk about jobs to our judge today and get that on record of the devastating effect that a spill would have on the Great Lakes and on our economy, our livelihood, and in our hearts. I think one disappointment that I hope that we can, clear up with the judge is he, equally compared the loss of jobs on a shutdown with Line 5 to the loss of jobs of an oil spill. I do not feel like that is an equal comparison. There are hundreds of thousands of jobs dependent on our tourism up north. And I don't think it's equal on the other side. I am pleased for all the work that the legal team here has done, for what the Bad River Tribe is doing, and all the organizations, because we did make a step forward in this continuing battle, and I'm here with you to the end.
Thank you. Okay, we're now going to shift to Ms. Severud, who is joining us virtually. So whenever you're ready, Gail, go ahead and unmute and begin.
Hello. Excuse me. Hello, my name is Gail Severud, and I live in northern Wisconsin near the city of Ashland and 6 miles from Lake Superior. I am a proud member of Sierra Club, and I totally support their national goal of achieving ambitious and just climate solutions. For the past 11 years, Sierra Club Wisconsin chapter, with a membership of 20,000, has been involved with the issue of tar sand oil pipelines that are sited throughout Wisconsin. In general, most communities that are near a tar sands pipeline are aware of the risk of oil spills. Knowing that Line 5 is 70 years old and 20 years past its expected life has heightened our concerns. Knowing that Line 5 has spilled 1.1 million gallons of bitumen-based oil product has heightened our concerns throughout Wisconsin, Michigan, and the Bad River Indian Reservation. The City of Ashland Common Council responded to these concerns in February of 2020 by passing a resolution in support of the Bad River Band to remove Line 5 pipeline from the Bad River watershed. Noting that an oil spill would damage natural and cultural resources of the region and damage the city's reliance on drinking water from Lake Superior. Recent flooding on the Bad River is again threatening the region. The Bad River Band is reporting high water levels and major erosion on the Bad River. Sierra Club chapter supports the Bad River's request for an emergency shutdown of Line 5. I am very disappointed that Enbridge did not voluntarily agree to the emergency shutdown. I feel their actions totally ignore the devastating impact of an oil spill on the region's drinking water, fishing industry, and wild rice production.
Thank you so much, Ms. Severud. Ms. Woodhouse, whenever you're ready, you can begin.
Thanks, Jenna. Good evening, everyone. My name is Michelle Woodhouse, and I am based in the Great Lakes Basin in Toronto, Ontario, on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabeg, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat nations. I'm the program manager of freshwater protections at Environmental Defence Canada, which is a leading environmental advocacy NGO in Canada. And I am of mixed ancestry that includes the Métis Nation and Indigenous Nation in Canada and British Canadian ancestry. I grew up in Southern Ontario as the kid of an automotive worker in the Great Lakes region, which is the epicenter of the automotive industry in North America. I know what it means to be from a family that is dependent on a livelihood that has historically been dependent on fossil fuels. One of the first questions I asked myself when I was brought into the fight to shut down Line 5 in the name of Great Lakes protections was, how can Canadians meet their energy needs reliably and affordably without this pipeline? And the answer is that we do not need Line 5 to do so. Environmental Defense commissioned expert industry analysis using Enbridge's own publicly available data, which was submitted to the Canadian Energy Regulator, and found that the two crude oil pipelines, Line 5 and Line 78, that supply product to Sarnia are not operating at capacity. And in fact, the majority of the shortfall caused by a Line 5 closure can be moved through Line 78. Line 78 was built to have greater capacity than it currently moves, and some additional pumping valves and minor retrofits to the pipeline could accommodate the majority of the product currently moving through Line 5, as I just said. The remaining shortfall could be moved by just 1 to 2 rail trains a day or less than 1 marine tanker a day on routes that are already moving crude oil, which is a short-term solution as we are transitioning off of fossil fuels. So a shutdown would not cause a spike in energy prices. Our analysis showed this, as well as Enbridge's own expert testimony, which confirmed prices would only rise roughly 2 cents per liter in Ontario and Quebec. And workers would not be significantly impacted by a shutdown because the necessary product is still making it to market, just not through a 70-year-old dangerous leaky Line 5. Bad River Band has also commissioned expert analyses which echoed the findings of our research that we do not need this pipeline. So we can live without the Line 5 pipeline, but we cannot live without the Great Lakes. We must stop delaying a planned and permanent shutdown. Every day that passes is another day we are gambling with the Great Lakes that hold 84% of North America's surface fresh water. And as a Canadian, I cannot overemphasize this last point. Canada must stop obstructing efforts to protect the Great Lakes and must revoke its use of the 1977 Pipeline Treaty and work in good faith and as a good partner with Indigenous nations of the Great Lakes and with the United States to shut down the pipeline, protect the Great Lakes, and turn to the alternatives that are within reach to meet our energy needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Grand Council Chief Niganabi, we are ready whenever you are to begin.
My name is Reg Niganabi from Mississauga First Nation, and I'm part of the Sturgeon clan. Today I speak as the elected Grand Council Chief of the Anishinaabeg Nation, which is the oldest political organization in Ontario, Canada, and can trace its roots back to the Three Fires Confederacy. This alliance between the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi protected the land, people, language, and culture of the Great Lakes Basin. Today, there are 39 chiefs in assembly who give direction to the elected leadership, which I am part of the organization to advance for their collective needs. The Anishinaabeg Nation supports the permanent shutdown of Line 5 in solidarity with our relations along the pipeline against the potential for catastrophic environmental damage as part of these obligations, but certainly in this case where the threat of a spill has been heightened due to flooding. Recently, the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues has also come forward with a recommendation for Canada to re-examine its support for Line 5, stating the pipeline poses a clear threat to the treaty rights of Indigenous nations on both sides of the border. The UN body has affirmed our calls for a permanent Line 5 shutdown. The Anishinaabeg Nation is disconcerted that Canada, as our treaty partner, is heavily involved in arguing against the inherent rights of Wisconsin and Michigan tribes. Canada has signed the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and we are perilously close to not meeting our 2030 goals. Enbridge is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. They've known this is a major issue for years, both in Bad River and in the Mackinac Straits. So why have they not acted accordingly to create safer alternatives? And finally, When we listen to young people speak, one can hear and feel their urgency. We have a duty to advance solutions to address the imminent concerns about their future, the majority of them focusing on environmental concerns and efforts of protection. We continue to advocate that this line will be effectively decommissioned to remove the imminent threat it poses to the Great Lakes and as part of the transition to renewable energy. We express our gratitude to our relatives who have been leading these critical advocacy efforts for years. We are proud to be one part of an even larger Anishinaabe family that crosses the Canada-US border and support the Bad River Band of Lake Superior Chippewa Indians in the emergency motion. Miigwech.
Thank you so much, everybody. So that wraps up remarks. We'll now move on to questions. We'll start with questions in the room. Do we have any questions here in the room? Yes, I'll repeat it for the Zoom participants.
Okay, yeah, it was for the,
Mr. Gandy.
yeah, Mr. Kanji. I was curious, do you feel that the use of the word imminent is, do you feel that, your position, is different, or the way that you're viewing that word imminent is different from kind of how the judge is interpreting that word?
And maybe could you come up here and answer that? The question was how does our view of the word imminent differ from perhaps the judge's view?
Yeah,
It might be, imminent is one of those broad terms that, it's subject to, it's kind of like, when you see it sort of thing, and I think the judge, clearly from the band's perspective, we are beyond imminent. The threat feels so great and so real. And Enbridge's position seems to be, you have to be right up on the precipice of the disaster for it to be imminent. I don't think that's where the judge is. I think he's somewhere shy of that, but perhaps not quite where, where we are, or we want it to be.
okay.
Did you want to answer that as well?
Yeah, I wanted to add to that.
Okay, Chairman Wiggins will add to that too.
Yeah, what I saw in court regarding the word imminent was the judge characterized the fall proceedings with the use of the word imminent. And then forwarding to today, including the use of the same word, the use of imminent, he kind of characterized that as just a repeat performance of us essentially being the boy who cried wolf. Right. But the huge difference in that word imminence was similar to what Riaz just said. He said it was about the things subject to. And so imminent threat in the fall time period was through a environmental impact scenario of some of the extremism that we've seen in our hydrology. The 2016 flood was a 1 in 1,000 year event. It reworked the entire hydrology, blowing out culverts, roads, streams. A couple of people lost their life, and we saw what was wooded river bottoms get scoured away to gravel sandbars that look like Alaskan kind of whitewater areas. What happened in 2016 was just a reality bender for how powerful the river can be in a certain kind of flood scenario. 2018, we seen a thunderstorm event that blew out US Highway 2. It took the state DOT all summer long and in the fall to repair that road, that federal highway. That was a Fish Creek. And so in the fall time, when we came talking about imminent threat, it was through that notion of what our ecosystems are capable of in certain types of storm events. What you saw today was a replay of the word imminent, but if you really paid attention to what was said in court today, they were talking about, and Enbridge tried to characterize low water, stable times, stable hydrology, gently receding waterways. The word imminent is still there. It's been heightened. What's happening now is that we're not talking about extremism anymore. We're not talking about 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 500. We are talking about your average Sunday afternoon thunderstorm arrival. possibly blowing this area out. And so it's the factors around the word imminent that have changed and that ultimately change the whole notion of imminence. And so there isn't apples to apples, the way the judge kind of seemed to kind of convey that today. It is a different scenario and it's based in fact.
Okay, thank you. I think actually we're only going to do reporter questions. I'm so sorry. You'll be able to talk after the press conference. I do have two more questions from the chat and then we'll wrap it up. So the first one, this is for you, Chairman Wiggins. Judge Conley seemed to think the band could and should have done more to allow Enbridge to do its remedial work. Do you agree? And do you think today would have gone differently if access had been granted?
So heard repeatedly today from the judge that we were, I think in his terms, complicit and contributing to the threat at the meander. A response to that and to the notion that we didn't do enough or maybe even didn't do anything to let Enbridge industrialize the river bottom is essentially that we have a federal authority under the EPA Clean Water Act to enforce our own water quality standards. Our water quality standards were developed by careful evaluation of our relationships as a people with different parts of our hydrology in the Bad River watershed. As an example, wild rice waters rose to that highest tier of protection. So under that federal authority, we have, I'll say bureaucratic processes, permitting processes that evaluate projects. As a tribal leader, I've had to go through the pains of wetland delineation and everything like that to get solar fields put in. And it wasn't easy. It took a lot of time. It was cumbersome and we had to do anti-degradation measures, and because of wet areas. So I know full well how powerful a system our water quality standards and our federal authority and those permitting processes can be. What was kind of put forward today was though none of that stuff should matter. None of that stuff should exist. When Enbridge came knocking, we should have just let them do whatever they wanted and they should have been able to blast away and horizontally, directionally drill into our groundwater and drinking water aquifers, whatever it took, perpetuate the flow of oil for their profit. We disagree. Those projects were reviewed in accordance with our federal authorities and as a sovereign nation overseeing our water and our drinking water. And quite honestly, there were some very, very poor and environmentally impactful propositions put forward by Enbridge that were rejected. What stood out to me the most today, being blamed as though, or maybe I'll say being blamed for not operating like an oil company as a tribe, or as a tribe not operating like an oil company, was that in the whole scheme of today's events, I never really heard Judge Conley acknowledge himself or acknowledge the whole realm of all-time litigation as a part of the remedy that we have sought, as a part of those things that we as a tribe have done to try to protect our waters and Big Lake and ourselves. It's incredibly important that Judge Conley continues to awaken to his own importance, to his own culpability in this whole matter of protecting the downstream resources and tribal people's way of life, our way of life. He is culpable too, and he is a part of our remedy. He looked at all of those other things like revetments and sandbags and all those things and held us accountable, so to speak, for not just allowing that stuff. Well, there's processes and permitting processes that are in play there. But at the end of the day, and to my point, Judge Conley is someone we're looking to do the right thing. That litigation wasn't for nothing this past fall. It was at a huge expense to our tribe and And quite honestly, it ain't easy living, with a ball of stress inside you when you worry about, existential threats like Line 5 ruptures. And so he is part of the remedy process, and we are fully engaged and fully employed. And, I want to say, I remember an elder from Mole Lake, during the Exxon mine battle telling me, we fought the mine for 26 years. So you know how long that is for Ojibwe people? No, because that's a couple blinks of an eye. Because we would have fought it another 500 years, Mike. And that's how I feel up here today. We're gonna have people awaken to the fact that this is an imminent threat, and that as a tribal nation, we're ready to continue to stand and protect ourselves.
Okay, just one final question and then we'll call it a day. This is for you, Mr. Kanji. The judge made reference to the Supreme Court today. Is that something the band would be willing to take it to if necessary?
So I hate to follow Chairman Wiggins after those very inspiring remarks, and I want to thank everyone who spoke today, including on the Zoom. It's just a real nice shot in the arm, and to feel the solidarity is very inspiring. We always think about the Supreme Court. We think about the Supreme Court from the day we start a case. You'd be foolish not to. And when you represent tribes, you have a real understanding that a lot of cases involving tribes end up in the Supreme Court. We've been very involved in some of them. I think so we're thinking about the court all the time. I think what I'll say is that one thing I have noticed practicing law is that, the district courts are the ones who are exercising these equitable powers. They're the courts that are, weighing these equities. They sometimes have a broader view of their equitable discretion than do the courts as you go up the system, where the circuit courts and the Supreme Court are thinking about principles of law. And it is a bedrock principle of law that you cannot condemn tribal land, and that tribal rights because of the horrible history in this country, there is now congressional protection for tribal lands that really doesn't apply to any other land. So where you have a company in conscious trespass like that, like Enbridge is, it is a very clear principle of law that the remedy is to end the trespass. Hopefully Judge Conley will see that. If he doesn't, we are hopeful and confident that the higher courts will. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. That concludes our press conference. Feel free to send me emails if you have more questions and want to follow up. My email is taxel, TAXEL @firstjustice.org. Thank you.
Oranges and bars to give away. I'm gonna get those.
Yeah.